President Trump lashing out at America's European allies again today, criticizing them for not getting more involved with the war in Iran and not helping reopen the Strait of Hormuz, where 1/5 of the world's oil flows through. In a Truth Social post, the president demanding the UK build up some delayed courage and go to the strait to, quote, get your own oil. He also warned that countries need to start learning how to fight for themselves because the USA won't be there to help you anymore, just like you weren't there for us. We're joined now by Javed Ali. He's a former senior director for counterterrorism at the NSC under President Trump. He's also an associate professor on practice at the University of Michigan. Javed, thank you so much for being with us. So with President Trump calling out Europe, what's your view of that message and how Europe is going to receive it?
So Boris, nice to be with you as well. And based on the latest comments from President Trump, to me, this is a continuation of these really, or the very tough line that President Trump has taken since coming back to office vis-a-vis Europe, either collectively on the continent or from the perspective of NATO or the European Union, where President Trump is expecting a different type of behavior from European governments when it comes to economic issues and national security issues now with the conflict with Iran or the war with Iran. Clearly, it seems that President Trump has expected some of these European countries to also get involved militarily, mostly in terms of helping get through the naval blockade that Iran has introduced in the Straits of Hormuz. But that appears not to be happening. It's certainly not on the timeline that President Trump wants. So I think as this tension continues to play out on Iran, we'll probably hear more of these tough messages from the president.
What about the role of U.S. allies on the Persian Gulf? Because Iran has fired drones and missiles at Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, the UAE, Oman as well. None of those countries have directly retaliated. Why?
So it's another fascinating aspect of what's happening. So almost from the beginning of the conflict on February 28th, that Iran began expanding its attacks outside of just Israel and U.S. military facilities across the region, which are located in almost all the countries you mentioned. But now we've seen Iran up the ante and go beyond just trying to strike U.S. military facilities in those countries. They're hitting economic targets as well and cultural or tourism related targets. So I think Iran is trying to put pressure on the Gulf countries to show that this is the kind of capability that they have. Iran is trying to hold the Gulf countries to some degree, I think, accountable for the war that has broken out. And also, I think part of their strategy is to get the Gulf countries to go back to the White House and perhaps put pressure on the administration to ease up on the military conflict. And we've now seen reporting from a number of different outlets suggesting that privately there may be a different message where some of the Gulf countries, including Saudi Arabia, might be encouraging the U.S. and Israel to continue the fight as it goes on. So this is also going to play out, but I don't think Iran is going to pull back on its strategy of targeting its neighbors in the Gulf.
Yeah, the reporting indicates that some of those Gulf neighbors want regime change. They want the U.S. and Israel to go even further. I wanted to get your thoughts on Pakistan as well, because they're in an interesting position. Along with China, they've asked for an immediate ceasefire, and Pakistan specifically is looking into the possibility of helping other nations' vessels get through the strait as they help mediate the conflict. How do you read their role in all of this?
Yeah, so the role of Pakistan has emerged in the more recent time period over the last couple of weeks with the conflict going on. And Iran and Pakistan have had long-standing diplomatic ties throughout since the beginnings of the Islamic Republic in 1979. So I think Pakistan is trying to leverage that relationship with Iran, despite other differences the two countries have. And pre-February 28th, we saw countries like Oman trying to sort of be intermediaries with respect to diplomacy between the United States and Iran. Now it seems like Pakistan has stepped into that. And one of the aspects that may be at play here is the strong relationship that folks in Pakistan's military establishment have with their counterparts in the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Now, some of those people in the IRGC have probably been killed, but there is media reporting that up to very senior levels in the Pakistani military and the army that they still have continued contact with the surviving senior leaders in the IRGC. So that's probably why we're seeing Pakistan play a more important role now, potentially either on diplomacy or on perhaps sort of helping out practically or operationally with respect to what's going on in the Strait of Hormuz.
But one last related question about the leadership in Iran. Do you believe Russia's ambassador to Iran, who said that the new Ayatollah Mojtaba Khamenei is alive and doing well and leading the country and simply refraining from public appearances as we haven't heard directly from him since the war began?
Yeah, it's tough to know what the true state is, but I have to believe that he actually is alive, because if he wasn't, I would think the Iranian clerical establishment and the IRGC already would have tried to pick his successor. I wouldn't understand the strategy of propping up the fiction that Mossadegh Khamenei is actually alive. But I do think he is very significantly injured from the initial strikes that were launched on February 28th by Israel against Ali Khamenei, his father, and other senior members of the IRGC and the clerical establishment. So until he probably can physically recover from those injuries, we probably won't see him. But we have heard statements attributed to him in the recent weeks. Whether he actually delivered them or dictated them, we don't know. But I do think he's alive. I just don't think he's in the condition we can that the Iranians are willing to show him to the world.
Javed Ali, thank you so much for sharing your expertise. Appreciate your time.